Hello friends, welcome to another lecture on mechanical behavior and testing of materials. So before getting into this lecture, I wanted to get across few things. So first of all, as you might have noticed, this lecture will not be on the backdrop of a presentation. Rather, I would be using the upgraded version of the conventional chalk and talk approach, meaning I will be doing some writing and explaining things to you. Now, secondly, since for most of you, this would be a rather introductory course on mechanical behavior and testing of materials, the fundamental concept, at least, I will be taking it in a very slow pace. I won't personally. I would want you to understand the fundamental aspects at least thoroughly, so that when you experience similar things in the day-to-day life, you are able to understand it. So what I mean by that is, in the first lecture, we took quite some time to understand something that is fairly known to most of you. So we took an example in our day-to-day life and tried to explain what is tensile, compression and torsion loading, and we also wanted to differentiate mass from weight and also define what loading is or what a load is. We took a considerable amount of time for that because these concepts will remain with us all through this course, and I want you to have a fair understanding about it, and I want you to be at least very strong about differentiating different forms of loading conditions, and that is the reason why I spent quite some time in that concept to differentiate or to introduce you to the different forms of loading. One takeaway point or one sort of an assignment that I would have you do is to think about different or to think about loading conditions that you experience in your day-to-day life. What if in some instances, if you are imposing a force onto something, I would want you to think about what sort of a force it is or what sort of a loading condition would you attribute to that. Supposing you are opening a door, that would mean that you are applying some sort of a force in opening that door, and if you want to categorize it as a loading condition, what condition would it be? So that is some assignment or thought experiment or thinking process that I would want you to have, so that you could be acquainted with the different form of loading conditions. Now again, the one other thing I also wanted to talk to you about is that you might find certain concepts or the way I am explaining it to you to be redundant, meaning I would be teaching in a very slow pace, or I would be repeating the same concept more than once. This is primarily because since I'm not able to see your faces, I'm not able to, that prevents me to discern if you have understood a concept that's being delivered to you or not. So in order to make myself sure that I have expressed to you that concept clearly, I would take some time to reiterate it. I would put more emphasis on it. Particularly, this would happen more often in the introductory lectures because the concept that you are exposed to in these introductory lectures will be with us all through this semester, all through this course, and only when you are able to clearly understand what I mean by a particular term, for instance, what I mean by load, what I mean by tensile loading, if you are able to understand that, you will be able to get along, or you will be able to understand other things that we will be building upon it. Okay, enough of the introduction. So please be clear about this, and if you have any problem anywhere, please do let me know. And if you find that some lectures are rather dragging and I am repeating myself more often, then that is one advantage of having this sort of a flipped lecture, is that you can view the same lecture at a rather a faster pace. There is an option for that in the platform that we are using, so you can make use of that, and you can rather view this particular lecture not at a normal speed. You can view that at a higher speed. If you are comfortable with that, you can of course do that. Okay, without further ado, let's get into this lecture. So in the first lecture, as I have just recollected, we saw what are the different mechanical conditions. So the primary goal of this lecture or this course is to understand how a material would respond to a definite mechanical conditions. And in the first lecture, we got exposed ourselves to what are the different mechanical conditions that we will be primarily focusing on in this lecture, or rather in this course. Let us now build on that and see how we will be quantifying those mechanical conditions, how we will be expressing the mechanical conditions that we impose on a material, how are we planning to express that, or how are we planning to quantify that. Now, in the second lecture, wherein we were talking about the historical perspective, from the historical perspective, the testing of materials, we talked about Galileo's experiment. Galileo, if you could recollect, he wanted a material to build his microscope, a material to wound his wooden tubes, and he found that copper was the best member for it. And then to find that, he studied the strength of the copper, and that experiment was rather very simple. What he did was he took copper rods and he started hanging weights at the bottom of them, and he kept on adding weights to the copper rods till the copper rod failed. So till the copper rod failed. So the term failed here, what I mean by the term copper rod failed means that the copper rod gives in and it breaks into two. So that is what I mean by failing of the copper rod. So what Galileo did was he started adding dead weights to the copper rod, and he kept on adding it till the copper rod failed, and he devised that at this particular weight my copper rod failed. So that is the strength of my copper rod. So that is how he expressed the property or the strength of the copper rod. Now, inspired by his work, some of you guys have planned to repeat the same research. Now, what you did was you took similar copper rods and you started hanging weights, and then you wanted to see the strength of the copper rods. Now, what happened was, since you guys are in your respective homes, you, like 2 or 3 of you got together and you made plans for conducting similar research and reporting on the strength of the copper rods. So you agreed amongst yourselves that you will be using pure copper for this this project, and then you bought such pure copper rods and you started hanging weights at the bottom of them, and you wanted to see how much weight does this copper rod withstand. Now, the first, if you are, imagine that you are a part of this and you are involved in this project. And now when you start doing this experiment and you realized that at around 50 kg, when you, again, this is purely an imaginary situation, you are doing this with a copper rod and around 50 kg, your copper rod failed. So now that you have reached a conclusion that pure copper rod fails at 50 kg, you called your friend, say friend 2, and you wanted to know at what weight does his copper rod fail. Now you did your experiment and your copper rod failed. Let's call that P fail 1, and it failed at 50 kg. You wanted to know that what if your friend got similar results, or what was his result. And you saw that your friend the copper rod of your friend was able to withstand a weight of 100 kg. You both did the same experiment. You both had pure copper rods. All you did was keep on adding weights to the copper rods, and you found that your copper rod failed at 50 kg, while your friend's copper rod withstood till 100 kg, and only after that it failed. Now you were confused and you are thinking about what was the different parameters. You asked about his weather condition. He said it was as sunny as always, and you both had similar sunny conditions. And then you were thinking about, is there any difference in the experimental conditions, and you argued back and forth. Everything appears to be the same. Now you had a third person in your group. You called them and you asked them, and he was disappointed too, because his copper rod P3 failed. His copper rod failed at 10 kgs, and you guys are completely distraught now, and you want to just repeat a simple well-known experiment of Galileo, a fairly simple experiment, but you are not able to get results that is agreeable amongst you. And you guys are talking back and forth and discussing back and forth what could be the primary factor that allows you to get such difference in the results. Now again, amongst the three of you, you are fairly sure that the experimental setup is the same, that you have used weight that is calibrated, and every other thing is the same. Now, based on your intuition, you know the load bearing capacity or the load at which the rod should fail should be the same, because you are fairly sure that you all used pure copper. Even then, you could see the differences in the load at which your material failed. So you guys were confused and you are arguing, and only then you realized that the biggest difference between your rods were their cross section. So what I mean by that is, the rod is a cylindrical structure. You have your rod and it's a cylindrical structure. Now, instead of using a rod of a uniform dimension, what you have used is, even though structurally you all used a cylindrical rod, the cross section of each of these rods were different. So the first person, that is you, used a rod of cross section A1. The second person, he used a rod of cross section A2, and the third person, he used a rod of cross section A3. And when you looked close into it, you could realize that the person with the least the person whose rod failed under the least loading condition, his cross section was the least. And the second place, or the cross section of your rod which failed at 50 kg, it was just greater than the least person cross section. And the largest rod was of the second person, whose load bearing or the load bearing capacity of whose rod was the highest. Okay, now you understood that the cross section of your rods were the factor that gave you different results. Now let us think here and try to explain some concepts. So you were fairly sure that when you wanted to test the load bearing capacity of the rod, you were fairly sure that each and every one of you should get same results, because you know that load bearing, or the load at which a material would fail, is the property of the material. So irrespective of where I do my experiment, since it is the property of the material, it should fail at the particular load. But you saw a difference, and that difference was because of the difference in the dimensions of your rod. So if you refer to your rod in the technical terms, if you refer to your rod as samples, you guys wanted to understand the material property, and that's why you started this experiment. But then the results that you got were corrupted by the properties of your sample. You don't want to have that. Supposing if you want to report this results as it is, what you would report is, okay, we three did our tests on copper rods, but we were not able to get, or we were not able to extract a material property out of it. But I can say what we got out of it. When your cross section is A1, this rod will bear a load of 50 kgs, and when your cross section is A3, it will just bear a load of 10 kgs. And if your cross section is quite huge, then it will bear correspondingly it will bear a huge amount of load, and it will bear a load of 100 kg. So this would be your result. Even though this result is fairly accurate, it does not give you the property of the material. And as a metallurgical engineer, if you want to report a property of the material, if someone comes to you trusting you to be a material expert, this is not the way you want to present. You want to present an objective property of the material. So how can we arrive at such an objective property of the material? So you guys think about it, and then you realize the only factor that varies amongst our experiment is the cross section. So what you now do is you just try to normalize this factor, that is the load bearing capability of your rods, by your cross section area. So what I mean by normalizing it is, you just take the ratio of the load bearing capability with your corresponding cross section. That means what you are trying to now do is you are taking the ratio of it. So the first person, instead of presenting his results just by the load at which the copper rod fails also includes this area of cross section, that is the property or the dimension of a specimen, and the second person does the same, and the third person does the same. And now you realize that all these values are fairly equal. Now, by eliminating the property of the sample, you were able to extract the material property out of your experiment. Now, all these results were same, and now you are able to tell that copper rod is able to bear a particular amount of load, that is P fail, per unit area. If you just consider per unit area, the copper rod is able to bear this amount of load. Now, what you have ended up doing is, now you are able to objectively present what is the property of that rod. Now, this is what we call as stress. When you just talk about load, when you just talk about the load bearing capability of the rod, what happens is that the property or the dimension of the material or the sample would come into play. Now, that is not the right way to present the property of a material. So, what you do is, in order to get rid of the dimension of your rods, you normalize it, you divide it by the cross section area, and then you see that the load bearing capability of your different rods of different sizes becomes equal, and then you realize this is what I want, this is the property of the material, and this is what is referred to as stress. Now, in the first lecture, we introduced that the unit of the load is nothing but kg meter per second square. We have your mass and you have your acceleration due to gravity. So, this is your unit of your load, and this is often translated as, or often referred to as Newton. And since now we are dividing this load in order to arrive at a material property, we are deriving we are dividing this load with the area of cross section, and now the unit becomes Newton per meter square or kg per meter per second square, and this factor is called as stress. Stress is nothing but it is the load experienced by your material per unit area, and this is nothing but a material properties. It is, you can express the stress irrespective of the dimension of your or cross sectional dimension of your material. And now, since all we have done is focus on failure of or the load at which your copper rod failed, now what we have is the failure stress, and this failure stress is nothing but the load at which your copper rod fails divided by its cross sectional area. I hope you have understood this. Now, let me pose this question to you. When you initially did this experiment under different cross sectional areas, you were pretty sure that the load bearing capability of each of these rods should be same. When you initially started this experiment, when you are not aware of what stress is, when you wanted to see the load bearing capability of copper, you are fairly sure that when I do this experiment, irrespective of where I am doing it, when I am doing it, the load bearing capability of copper rod should be the same. What made you or why did you have that assumption in the first place? You can pause here for a moment and think. Why were you sure that when I do a particular load bearing experiment on copper rods, the amount of load that a copper rod withstands should be the same? You can think about it, pause for a moment and think about it. Now, if you have thought about it, or if you are again too tired to think, let us do the thinking together. Now, the reason why you would expect a similar load bearing capability of the copper rod is because all these materials are the same, and if the materials are the same, that means that load bearing is the property of the material. It is some feature of the material, and that means irrespective of where you do the experiment, if the environment is more or less the same, if the experimental setup is more or less the same, then you should expect the same result. Now, what property are we talking about here? Or to put it simply, why when you increase the cross section of your rod, why when you increase this cross section of your rod, was your rod able to withstand more load? What enabled it to withstand more load? Now, if you consider a rod what comprises of this rod is its corresponding metal atoms, and they are bound together, particularly in copper, through metallic bonds. You can have similar resemblance of a component comprising of a system. If your rod is made up of ceramic, you would have some complex molecules. If your rod is made up of polymers, you have your monomers which forms bond with respect to other monomers. So irrespective of your rod, what your rod is made up of, it would have some certain components that is bound to another component. So your rod is rather homogeneous in nature. The whole of this rod is more or less made up of similar material, and these materials are bound together. Now, when you want to make this material fail, when you want to make this material break, what you are ideally doing is breaking the bonds between these atoms. You are ideally breaking the bonds of these atoms. And now, when you increase the cross-sectional area of a rod, what you are ideally doing is you are increasing the number of bonds that hold this whole structure together. When you have larger cross-section area, it means you have larger number of bonds that hold this whole structure together. And now, when you want to break this bonds along with the rod, then you have to have a larger load to break these bonds. And that is the reason why when you have a larger cross section, you need to have a larger load in order to break it. With the increase in the cross section of the rod, the number of bonds that hold that rod together increases, and since failure is nothing but breaking of these bonds, you need to have a larger load to break these bonds. And since we have similar materials and we want to test similar materials, the bonds that hold this material is the same. So the property, when you say I expect similar failure stress, or I expect similar failure load for every copper rod I am testing, this is because the bonds that hold the rod are the same, irrespective of the size and shape of the rod. Since it is made up of copper, the bonds that hold the rod is the same, and the bonds that we need to break through by loading is the same, and that is the reason why we expect similar failure loading, similar failure stress. And the only thing that changes is with increasing the cross section, the number of such bonds increases, and that is the reason why we see a change in the failure loading. And now when we then normalize this failure loading with the cross section area, you arrive at what we call as failure stress that would be same for every copper rods. Now, when your material is homogeneous, it is made up of same, if it comprises of same bondings between the atom or any other corresponding components, be it molecule or monomers, when every bonds that are within the rod is the same, then the failure stress for that rod would be the same irrespective of its dimension, since we are expressing this failure stress by normalizing the load with respect to the dimension. I hope this point is clear. Now, the other way of expressing what a stress is, now you can bring this A over here, then the load required to break a material is nothing but the product of its failure stress, which is the property of material, and its cross-section area. So, if you think about it, this stress is the resistance force, the internal resistance force that prevents the material from failing when you apply a dead weight to it. Let me repeat, if you take this expression, so P fail is the load that you apply in order to break your material, and here is your area, the area over which you will be breaking your material, and the only term that resists this failure of material is this term, and this is what we expressed as stress here. And one way of defining stress is that the internal resistance force that would prevent your material from failing, and that is what we call as, that is another definition for stress. And again, since we have gotten rid of all the properties of the sample or the rod by normalizing it with the area, this is purely a material property. Okay. Now let us continue with our thinking about the dead weight experiment. Now before closing on this experiment, you guys just wanted to see how the material has changed before and after loading, before and after the failure. And when you, after the failure, once you have material has broken into two, you bring those two pieces put together and compare it with the unstrained or the sample on which the load has not been imposed yet. So to make it clear, so you guys, instead of having two samples, you have instead of having one samples, you guys bought two samples of similar size. Pardon me, this let's just say this is size is L0 and this again is L0. So the drawing is not according to the scale, but forgive me. So you have, instead of one sample, now instead of having one sample, you bought two samples of same cross section area of same material. Now one, you allowed it to you put a dead weight at the bottom of this one of the two samples and you allowed it to fail. After the sample has failed, you then brought these two together, two pieces of the failed sample together. You just brought these close together, and then you compared it with the sample that was not tested. Now you could see that the length has considerably increased. Now if this is the sample that was not tested and this is the sample that has failed, now this has changed its length considerably. Now one could argue that once it has broken down, you will not be able to make it fit into its right place, but even doing so, you realize that the change in the length is quite significant. Now this again is also a property of the material, because before it gives in, before it breaks, it was able to grow through some sort of a change in its dimension. And now you also want to see what, you want to quantify what this change in the dimension is. And you want to express it as a property of the material without involving any dimension in any of its characteristic dimension of the sample. And now in order to do that, first you wanted to see how much of a change there is. So you saw the difference in the change in length. So let us call this difference in the change in length, say DL. And since the L is rather an elongated one, since the length has increased as a part of or as a side effect of this failure, now you subtract this L and the initial length L0, and you could see that there is a measurable amount of this change in length. Now you want to express this change in length or you want to normalize this change in length with respect to your dimension of your sample. And so what you do is you take the ratio of this change in length with respect to your original length, meaning you calculate the change in the dimension of your sample that it has experienced during the failure. You express it in this way. So you normalized it based on its initial condition or based on its initial length, and you have expressed the change as the numerator. So more or less the similar thing what we have done for expressing the stress. And now this is what we call as this strain. So we have introduced to you what a stress is. The stress, one of the definition is, it is the internal resistance that prevents the material from failing. At least what the failure stress is, that is the internal resistance that a material offers from failing, or to any imposed load. Resistance is offered by a material, and that internal resistance per unit area is what we call as stress. Or to put the matters more simply, when you talk stress from its mathematical point of view, so stress is nothing but, to put it very simply, a load is experienced by a material. Now you want to know the stress of it, you can just calculate it by normalizing the load to its corresponding area, or stress is nothing but load experienced by a material per unit area. And similarly, we can see what a strain is. Strain is nothing but change in the dimension that is brought to the material because of this load with respect to its initial conditions. So in this lecture, what we have done is we have introduced what a strain is and what stresses. Please note that in this lecture, all we have talked about is not different types of strain, even though we gave a general definition for it, even though we are able to give a general expression for what a stress is and what a strain is. What we were actually talking about was a failure stress and a failure strain. So these were the characteristic stress and strain, or characteristic properties of the material that we were concerned or we were discussing all through this lecture. So think about it for a while, how we were able to express a behavior of a material that varied with the dimension of that particular or dimensions of the sample. How were we able to extract or get rid of the property of the dimension and express purely the behavior or the property of the material. So think about it. We were based on a simple experiment, we were able to derive rather a property of the material, that is failure stress and also the failure strain of the material. Just think about the process that went into it in order to derive the property of a material from a simple experiment, or particularly how were we able to get rid of the influence of the behavior or influence of the dimensions of the sample from the results that we got. Now in the subsequent lectures, like the failure stress and the failure strain, we will be seeing there are several other characteristic stress and strains that are involved during the behavior of a material in response to a mechanical condition. Like failure stress and failure strains, there will be different characteristic points, different characteristic stress and strains that are involved during the response. When a material responds to a mechanical conditions, there are several other characteristic stress and strains that are involved. We will be looking into what are those characteristic stress and strains are, and then we will try to calculate, or we will try to derive some understanding from them. So thanks for your time. Please think about more than the mathematical expressions. Think about how we arrived at them. If you have any questions, you can always reach me, or you can always mail me. Thanks a lot for your attention. We will see ourselves in the next lecture.